Elizabeth and I are here in Saint-Brieuc. The boat is in Paimpol, and the big advantage that this place has, which is probably its only one, is that there is customs.
We've checked out today.
Checked out today. We'll let you know how that went. Thank you very much for watching. At the end of the last episode, we were in Treyburden, and it was absolutely our intention to continue to the west, possibly in towards Morlaix, but for domestic reasons, it became necessary for us to turn round. So we ended up leaving, heading north, and then heading swiftly into the east, quite a long journey, and then down into Paimpol, which is the place that everybody said that we should go to. So we looked forward to that. Treyburden, nice and early in the morning, in company with this Bowman 38 who were heading west. And as we headed up, you can see here the wind was not terribly strong, but it was almost right behind us, and we got the kite up and carried it for a good 7 or 8 hours as we headed to the east. Arrived in Paimpol, it had gone a bit quiet. We were the only people going in on the Sunday night other than this very pleasant French gentleman. In through the lock gates was nice and straightforward, and got ourselves parked up and went out for what would turn out to be our last meal in France. We needed to travel south to Saint-Brieuc in order to get to the customs, in order to check out, having stamped in at Cherbourg. But then we started making our plans for heading north. First part of the trip was Paimpol up towards the Casquettes Light, and the second part was the channel crossing from, in the order of Alderney, up into the western Solent. Total distance 150 miles. The track you saw there wasn't the one we actually followed, because that went straight over this set of rocks and through Alderney, but we shaped a course in order to go very much upwind of those particular dangers, and we were able to carry the spinnaker for a good long chunk of that journey, which was very pleasant. And this is us just rounding bang the bottom of Guernsey itself, and then we headed a bit further north. Elizabeth and I left Paimpol this morning at about 6 o'clock, just as it was getting light. Got out of the main harbour, managed to get the sails up, very gentle sail up, and then we have had the spinnaker up almost since then, which has been nice. We took it down as we went past Roche d'Ouve, which and I sort of wish that I'd taken it down just as we came round the Les Hanoï's light. As we were coming along, it suddenly got very bouncy, and it wasn't until I looked closer at the chart that I saw that actually even in 50 metres of water, the sudden change of depth of the seabed probably meant that there was massively disturbed seas. I mean, it was fine, but just felt a bit overly exciting for a little while. So we've been going about six and a bit hours now, just getting ourselves north of Guernsey, shipping lanes or traffic separation schemes to navigate yet, and we don't expect to be in Portsmouth till early tomorrow. Weather forecast at the minute, well, this is really nice at the moment, 3 to 4 from the west, which just couldn't be better, but forecast to die at about midnight, which is going to make things a bit troublesome.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Say again?
I'm not doing that.
Elizabeth says she's not doing that watch, but we'll see how we get on. One thing that I wouldn't mind talking about, because it came up today, is apparent wind and lee bowing. Is on this cross-channel trip of about 140 miles, both of those are quite important. First of all, the apparent wind versus the true wind. Slightly surprising, maybe not surprising, but this is a little bit of a difficult thing to understand straight away. A bit like course to steer, it isn't completely obvious until you start to think about it how it's going to work. The way I try to teach it when I'm doing particularly comp crew and day skipper is to do a little bit of ask people to have a think about a person standing at a crossroads that it runs north, south, east and west with an anemometer on their head. Slightly difficult to imagine, I know, but bear with me for a minute. And I say to them, imagine that the wind is blowing from the north at 10 knots, and say, what happens if the person, walks up the street to the north at 3 knots? And everybody pretty quickly gets the idea that, yeah, it's going to read north and it's going to read 13 knots. And we say, what happens if he turns around? And that's pretty straightforward. It's going to be still from the north, but it is going to be 7 knots. What gets interesting is when I ask people what happens when the person turns to the west and starts walking west at 3 knots. And the answers, and there tends to be a little bit of scratching of heads. Intuitively, a lot of people say the wind speed will go down and the wind will appear to come from the northeast. And actually, that's exactly not what happens. What happens is, as you walk to the west with the wind from the north, the 3 knots of your own vector and the 10 knots of the wind get added together, and therefore the wind speed goes up a little bit, and your forward motion causes the wind to appear to go slightly forward, in this case slightly into the northwest. And similarly, if you turned around and went east, the wind would then appear to be coming from the northeast, but also very slightly higher than the 10 knots of true wind. And this is the difference between true and apparent. The true wind has, in this scenario, always stayed as north 10 knots, and the apparent wind has moved, depending on whether you're going north, south, east or west, or particularly west and east, it has moved from northwest through to northeast. Normally when I describe it like that, people then become very comfortable with it, and I will frequently ask people on a course, if we altered course now, what will happen to the apparent wind? Will it increase or decrease? Will it move forward? Will it move aft? And that actually is pretty. That is pretty important to understand when you're helming.
I thought I might recap this with the benefit of graphics. Imagine a boat heading north, wind in the west at 15 knots, where the boat speed's 0, the apparent wind will be 270, and the apparent speed will be 15 knots. So much, so easy. But if the boat speed increases to 6 knots, the apparent wind will appear to go forward, in this case 22 degrees, and the apparent wind will increase, in this case to 16 knots. That's because this problem is solved with a vector set that looks like this. And it's the red line that represents the apparent wind. If the wind, therefore, went slightly further forward, the wind would appear to go forward also, and it would increase again in terms of speed. In this case, we wouldn't be able to go directly north, and we'd be forced to bear away. That's an important consideration when crossing the channel. How is this going to work? Similarly, we were expecting the wind to go slightly aft. It didn't, in fact, but it should have gone slightly aft, and we would have been able to ease our sails on the broader point of sail, although the apparent wind wouldn't have come any further back.
This is the formula for working out the apparent wind velocity. I got this on Wikipedia, and it's fairly straightforward, although it took me a few minutes to get myself sorted out with trigonometry that I haven't used for years. But what I then did was put that into a spreadsheet that allowed me to give the apparent wind speed and wind angle for various boat velocities, true wind and true angles. and this corresponds to the Contessa polars.
The other effect that's had a non-trivial impact on today's journey is that of is described being lee bowing. It makes a big difference if you're crossing a narrow channel. The wind and the tide can be in opposite directions, and you might say to yourself, actually, it doesn't matter which leg I'm on, I'm going to have to tack in order to get upwind. But actually, there is a little bit of a difference. If the wind is on one side and the tide is on the other, then the tide can and does offer you up to the wind on one tack, and it will take you away from the wind on the other tack. And then therefore on the tack where it is offering you up to the wind, your wind speed, apparent wind speed, is going to be higher, and on the other it's going to be lower. This will change the point of sail that you can achieve on either tack, and one of them is going to make quite a lot more than the other.
So if I may use the graphics, going back to our original example, let's add 3 knots of tide on the windward bow. And what that will do is it will appear to make the boat go slower and the wind even further forward. What that looks like in terms of our little triangle is like this. The true wind speed, originally 15, is reduced down to 12, and that will change the apparent wind angle. It'll appear to be further forward, and the boat speed a bit less. But if the tide is on the opposite bow, i.e. Opposite to the wind, what will happen is the true wind speed will appear to go up to 18 knots, which will make the apparent wind speed nearly 19, and that change in angle will reduce as well. This had a pretty major real world effect for us as we got north of Casquettes, when the tide started pushing us in the same direction of the wind, dropping the apparent wind speed and dropping our speed. And by the time we got to sunrise the following morning, it was very much lighter, and we ended up motoring a fair bit of the way. Well, it's Friday afternoon and we're not in Morlaix. Indeed, we're at home. It came back in order to discover a non-trivial amount of gardening to be done. Everything's gone absolutely wild. But it looks like we're going to be in the Solent for a little while, so we'll be sorting out a new itinerary from there. We absolutely loved that part of the French coast, very much unexplored by us, and we would highly recommend, I think.
Great sailing, brilliant food, and the locals were very friendly.
Very friendly indeed.
Yeah.
It was really pleasant, and we got absolutely terrific support when we needed to sort out visit to customs. The team in Pampol really could not have done more.
I would highly recommend going to Pampol. What do they call them? Capitaneer? I don't know. Yeah. As I say, John said he could not have helped us more.
No, it was delightful.
And the Douane were absolutely brilliant because they stayed open.
Yeah, we had to meet the customs, and the customs, it was a holiday in France. The gentleman in the port rang the customs. The customs said, "Don't worry, we'll stay open." We managed to make our way down there, and they were super helpful. So thank you to all of them. As I say, we're going to stay in the Solent for the next little while and make up a new plan from here.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope it was useful. I hope the insight into our crossings helps you in your passage planning. Certainly we're feeling a lot more confident as a team about taking these things on and getting ourselves sorted out.
Apart from tankers. They sneak up like sharks, especially at night.
Yeah. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.